Hello, biology students. Mrs. Smith here. We're now on to the practice problems for our dihybrid crosses. I'm going to be going through practice problems 1, 2, and 3 on this video. Please make sure you're using this as a supplement, not to find out all the answers. Remember, you do need to be able to complete these problems on your own. So this video can be used as a means to check your answers, also to help you if you get stuck on certain points of it. But please don't just use it to copy down all of the work, because that's not going to help you learn how to do it. Try these on your own, and if you make mistakes, that's fine. That's what the video is for, to then go back and correct some of those mistakes. All right, let's look at number 1. In grasshoppers, the body color of brown is dominant over green. Also, having strong legs is dominant over having weak legs. So let's find some alleles here. So brown, we're going to give a big B. Green, we're going to give a little b. Strong legs will give a big S. And weak legs will give a little s. So we have a heterozygous brown male. So heterozygous brown, be big B, little b. Homozygous strong. So homozygous, we know each allele is going to be the same. Strong, we just said, is dominant. So big S, big S. Male meets a heterozygous brown female. So heterozygous brown, big B, little b. Homozygous weak, we know weak is recessive. It said right there. So homozygous means both alleles are the same. Weak, we know, is a little s. And so there's the genotypes of the male and the female. Now we need to go through and find the possible gametes. So remember, the easiest way to do that is to FOIL your parental gene pairs to make sure we find all the possible gene combinations. So for the male, you should get big B, big S, and little b, big S. Remember, you'd end up with 4 if you FOIL, but 2 of them are duplicates, so we can cross them out. And then for the female, we get big B, little s, and little b, little s. Our next step is to put it in on our Punnett square. So we have big B, big S. And here. Again, if you put them on opposite sides, you would have been fine, so long as you didn't mix the male and female gametes. All right, next you need to fill in your Punnett square. I'm going to pause the video while I fill mine in. You should do. All right, Punnett square is filled in. We can now go through and find our ratios. So genotypic ratio, just like with before, we're going to start up here. We've got big B, big S, little s, and there's only one of those. Next we have double heterozygous, so big B, big B, big B, little b, big S, little s. We have 1 here and 1 there, so a total of 2. And then our last guy right here, we have 1 little, big little. So much easier than the last example that we did, fewer combinations. All right, phenotypic ratio. Big B, if we go back and read the problem, that's going to be a brown grasshopper. Big S, little s is going to be strong legs. So far we have 1 of those. Cross it off. All right, up next, big B, little b. That's also going to be a brown body. Big S, little s is also going to be strong legs. So we already have that category. So we just need to bump that up to a 3. Cross this off so we know we already took care of it. All right, let's look at our last one. Little b, that's going to be a green body. And big S, little s is still going to be strong legs. So our last category is going to be 1 green body with strong legs. If we go through and count, 3 plus 1 gives us 4. If we count these, 1 plus 2 plus 1 gives us 4. We have 4 filled in up here, so everything checks out. All right, let's look at the questions. D, what % of the offspring will exhibit both dominant traits? Remember, dominant traits were a brown body and strong legs. So let's take a look. Here's the brown body with strong legs. We have 3 out of 4. So 3 out of 4 is going to give us a percentage of 75. Question E, what % of the offspring will have a brown body and weak legs? Oop, there's a typo there. If you look, none of them have weak legs. So our % is 0. F, what are the chances of having a green grasshopper with strong legs? Let's look, that's this guy right here, green grasshopper with strong legs. That is 1 out of our 4 possible phenotypes, or 4 possible outcomes. So 1 in 4. All right, let's move on to number 2. In zorks, yes, that's a made-up bird. In zorks, blue tail feathers are dominant over red ones. So we're going to give a big B for blue and a little b for red. Also, long toes are dominant and short toes are recessive. Actually, I'm going to use a T. It's a little bit easier than L's. So we're going to do long toes is a capital T and short toes is a lowercase t. All right, cross a homozygous blue-tailed. So homozygous means both alleles will be the same. Blue we know is dominant, so we're going to have a big B, big B. Heterozygous long-toed. So heterozygous we know is going to be one of each. We're crossing that zork with a female zork who is homozygous red-tailed. So homozygous means they'll both be the same. Red we know is recessive, so we're going to get a little b, and a short-toed zork. Short-toed zork. Short toes we know are recessive, so she's going to be little t, little t. All right, next up we have to find our possible gametes. So go through and foil, pause the video, see what you get. All right, you should get big B, big T, and big B, little t. And for the female possible gametes, you'd get little b, little t, and that's it. All the others are repeats. If we put those in on our Punnett square, you can see we're going to get a pretty small Punnett square. I don't even need to pause it to fill it in. All right, let's do our ratios. Genotypic ratio. If we start up in the corner, we have 1 big B, big T, little t. And then we have 1 big B, little t, little t. Phenotypic ratio, let's see what this means. Big B, little b we know is blue. Big T, little t we know is long toes. So we have 1 zork with blue feathers and long toes. Big B, little b is still going to be blue feathers. Little t is going to be short toes. So then we have 1 blue zork with short toes. All right, let's go back to our questions. D, what % of the offspring will exhibit both dominant traits? Dominant traits we know are blue feathers and long toes. So let's take a look. Blue feathers, long toes is right there. So that's 1 out of our 2 options. So we should get 50% of the offspring will exhibit both dominant traits. E, what % of the offspring will have a blue tail and short toes? Blue tail, short toes is right there. That's 1 out of a possible 2. So that's also going to be 50%. And F, what are the chances of having a blue feathered zork with long toes? That's this guy again, blue feathered zork with long toes. That is 1 out of a possible 2. So if you look with this combination, no chance of having a red feathered zork. All right, let's move on to our last example, number 3. Chestnut coat of color in horses is due to a recessive gene, while the dominant allele results in black. So let's give a big B to the black fur and a little b for the chestnut coat. The pacing gait is due to a recessive gene, whereas the dominant allele results in the trotting gait. So capital T for trotting, a lowercase t for pacing. Show the types of offspring that could result from a cross of a black trotter. So we know he has both dominant traits, and they're saying he's heterozygous for both of these. So we're going to have big B, big T, little t, with a chestnut pacer. If we go back and look, chestnut is recessive and pacing is recessive. So we have little b, little t, little t. All right, our next step is to find our male possible gametes. So go through and foil your genotypes. All right, if you take a look, we're going to have 4 possible gametes for the male and 1 possible gamete for the female. I'm going to fill those in across my Punnett square. And then go ahead and fill it in. All right, our next step is to find our ratios. So the genotypic ratio, same pattern we did before. Start in the upper left-hand corner and move. So we have big B, big T, little t. There's only 1 of those. Up next, we have big B, little t, little t. There's only 1 of those. Up next, we have little b, big T, little t. There's only 1 of those. And last, we have all recessive, and there's only 1 of those. All right, our phenotypic ratio. Big B is going to give us a black horse. Big T, little t is going to give us a trotter. And so far, we have 1 of those. All right, cross that one off. Big B is another black horse, but little t is a pacer. So we also have the chance of getting a black horse that is a pacer. All right, cross it off. Next one, little b, that's going to be a chestnut horse. Big T, little t, we know is dominant, so it's going to be a trotter. So we have one so far, chestnut, trotter. And our last one, little b, we know is chestnut. Little t, we know is a pacer. So we have one chestnut pacer. All right, let's go back and answer our questions. D, what percentage of the offspring will exhibit both dominant traits? We know dominant is having black fur and being a trotter. So let's go back and look and see if we have any black trotters. We got one right there. So we have one black trotter out of a possible 1, 2, 3, 4 outcomes. So 1 out of 4 gives us 25%. All right, E, what percentage of the offspring will be chestnut trotters? So let's take a look. Here's our chestnut trotter right here. So again, there's one chestnut trotter out of 4 possible outcomes. 1 in 4 gives us 25%. F, what are the chances of having a chestnut horse that paces? So a chestnut pacer is this guy right here. There is one of those out of 4 possible outcomes. So 1 in 4.